Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. Thanks for tuning into today's episode. I'm your host and I am super excited about doing a Q&A episode. This is a place where I talk about health and wellness and biohacking, especially for women, especially for mothers on their journey. And I get a lot of questions in my DMs that are honestly such a wide range of topics. And I've kind of played around with this before, but I'm thinking now to change up the podcast for this year and make every Friday the Q&A episode and every Tuesday the interview episode where I get to bring on guests that provide valuable information for you, teach you something, help you grow, motivate you, inspire you to be healthier in everything that you do. So I'm going to start kind of pulling some of the questions that I find in my DMs. I'm probably going to just try to do about 3 an episode because I think anything more than that is a little long. And so your question might end up here. Who knows? Who knows what we will do? And it's also nice to just have a, diversity of content as well, I think is great. So today, speaking of, it was so easy to pull questions. I just opened up my DMs. And so we are going to be covering supporting your baby's gut health, especially after a C-section, how to lower your HbA1c and optimize your metabolic health, and whether or not I used a sauna during pregnancy, what the science says, what different cultures do, and if I recommend it. So let's dive in. Before we get started, a shout out to Lila Quantum Tech, who has finally come out with women's underwear that blocks EMF. I'm actually wearing a pair right now as I sit here and record this in my office. So the underwear is made out of fabric that has silver fibers woven into it. And essentially the silver blocks the EMF from actually going into your body. This includes 3G, 4G, and 5G, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, anything that can really penetrate the body and cause harm. I'm really excited about this. I think it's so needed. It was something that I really looked at creating a long time ago when I was very concerned about my ovary health and ovulating regularly and having a regular menstrual cycle and then fertility and pregnancy. And so it's really nice just having this peace of mind of even though I have all of this equipment around me and the Wi-Fi is on and, there's 5G towers around, it's nice to know that I have some sort of shield that can protect my ovaries. And this matters because the ovaries produce a ton of hormones, especially, basically up until menopause, but also it hosts and holds all of your eggs. And so those eggs are related to having healthy ovulation and fertility and healthy pregnancy and then a healthy baby. So it actually really does matter. So Lila Quantum Tech, way to go. So excited to see your innovations coming through this year, putting women first. You can check them out. Use my discount code BioHackingBrittany. It will get you an extra 10% off of their products, including the underwear. They have a range of different products, but I highly suggest you get it. They have briefs and they have more of a thong cheeky style. I have both. I think both are great. My only recommendation is to size up because they do run a little small. So check those out. And let me know what you think when you grab a pair. I think I have a few pairs. Totally worth it and totally worth it because it gives you such a peace of mind. All right, let's dive into today's episode. The first question. So this is a friend of mine, kind of a friend on Instagram who I've never met in person. Basically, she had a C-section with her baby, as did I, unfortunately. And her baby was actually also breech, which was wild. And she was talking about starting solids. And so she sent me this question. She's like, did you do anything for Callahan's gut flora besides breastfeeding because she had her baby who was a C-section? I thought this was a great question. And of course, this was something that was top of mind for me before I had Callahan. In about the week leading up to his birth, I was aware that this was something that I was going to have to work on and biohack in a sense. It was something that I had to focus on and make sure that we supported his gut microbiome and his flora as much as we could more because he was a C-section baby. So thankfully, there's a lot that you can do. And I love that parents are actually just becoming more aware of how birth and early nutrition really impacts the gut microbiome. I think there's so much to say about this, and breastfeeding is one of the most powerful things you can do for your baby's gut health because it provides essential prebiotics, beneficial bacteria, and immune supporting components. Breast milk is pretty complex. Yeah, it's very complex. Everything I've read about it, formula doesn't even come close. Mind you, there is a time and place for formula and there's no shame around it. However, breast milk is so complex. It's actually very beautiful that the body can make something so unique for your baby. So the first recommendation is obviously if you can breastfeed, please do, and please try your best to be able to breastfeed. And she said besides breastfeeding, so I know she's breastfeeding and that's why she's thinking above and beyond. So what else can we do to really be able to support the baby microbiome? Something interesting that I do definitely want to touch upon in regards to this, and I actually need to do further research on to be totally transparent, is that my understanding of the C-section and a vaginal birth in terms of the gut microbiome was that when baby is born through the vagina, it gets all the good bacteria from mom, and that helps to propagate and create this beautiful microbiome in the baby. And that is true. However, I listened to a podcast episode a while ago, and I do need to do more research on it, that said that yes, that is true, but that is not necessarily the microbiome or the bacteria that actually populates the gut. It's actually the bacteria that comes out right, I guess, for lack of better terms, like right by the anus when baby is being born, that the baby is somewhat exposed to, which goes, I guess, onto their body, into their body, and populates their gut microbiome. Because technically the vaginal microbiome is different than the gut microbiome. And so it's through that close proximity to the anus, which is obviously connected to the intestines and the gut, through that channel is what propagates and makes this beautiful gut microbiome. So that was the first time I've heard that. And that person on that podcast was kind of debunking this whole idea of vaginal seeding, which I'm going to get into in a second. But essentially, they were saying that the vagina has a different microbiome. And if you vaginal seed, which I did, if you swab the vagina and then you take that swab and you put it all over the baby, you're giving the baby your vaginal microbiome and your vaginal bacteria, but that is not necessarily the bacteria that's actually going to form and populate in the gut, because that's the bacteria that comes from the gut out through the small intestine, large intestine, then through the anus, and through the colon, then through the anus. And so it doesn't make sense that we're doing that. So that was very interesting. I don't know if you've ever heard that theory. I think that is something I've only ever heard someone say that once. So I need to do more research into it, but let me know, send me a message if you know more about that, because part of me thinks that actually does make sense because it is different microbiomes and, the bacteria would populate in different areas of the body but then is there so much movement towards vaginal seeding or swabbing if we're not doing it from the correct place would be my question. And that leads me into doing that with this idea of natural microbial exposure. So some people call it vaginal seeding or swabbing. It's basically where a sterile swab collects vaginal fluids to transfer to the baby's mouth, nose, and skin, mimicking the exposure they've gotten in a vaginal birth. Research on this is still emerging. It's very new. And I did this. So let me actually describe to you how this was done in person, because it was different than what I thought before I went through this. So before you give birth, when you are going through contractions, if you have contractions, or if you're getting ready for your C-section, you put these tiny little sterile swabs, like the same ones that come in a first aid kit. and you actually just put them up your vagina like you would a tampon, and you leave them there for however many minutes, maybe it's 20 minutes, I don't know. It's really not that long. And then you take them out, they put them in a bag or a dish, a sterile dish. And then when you have your baby later on, after the baby is born and the baby is breastfeeding, or you're trying to breastfeed or lying on you or sleeping or whatever, you take that swab and you wipe it on their mouth, on their nose, on your nipple, on their skin. So that's how it actually works in real life. For whatever reason, I didn't really clue into like what it was going to be like. But yes, we did that. I highly suggest doing that if you are planning a C-section. And just so you know, and again, I just want you to know that I definitely did not have a perfect C-section at all. I didn't have a perfect birth, not even close. But when I was lying on the table in the transition room we went from the OR to the transition room to, the first room that I was in, my body temperature was very, very low. I was very cold. So I had to actually be in there for longer. I think I was in there for like 2 hours. Usually, I don't even know. I think it was 2 hours. Usually it's less than that. And they kept trying to warm me up because the OR, the operating room, is extremely cold. And they had a hard time getting me back to normal body temperature. And it was in that room where, I'm with my baby, my husband's there, my two midwives are there, the nurse is there, and that type of thing. And they actually forgot to do the vaginal seeding. So I want you to know that it's so imperative that you are on top of it, and not even on top of it. Like, it's so imperative that you become as educated as you can and understand how things work as best you can going into a C-section birth, so that you can really know what is going on around you, even when you're drugged up like I was. Because I remember lying on that table and asking my midwife, hey, have we done the vaginal seeding? She's like, oh my gosh, we forgot. Okay, let's do it right now. And it wasn't a big deal, right? Because we're in the first few hours after birth. We could do it right away. It was fine. We still did it. But it was like just this idea of how on earth was me, a brand new, fresh mom of 2 hours, hooked up on whatever, morphine, and had just been cut open and was freezing cold and like all of the things, right? How is it me who had that much clarity and that much awareness to actually call it out and say, hey, let's get this done? It's pretty shocking looking back that I even thought of that. Good for me. I mean, I don't know. It's just appalling that the midwives forgot. But anyway, so please, if you haven't had your C-section yet and you are doing one, please look into vaginal seeding. I think it's one of the best ways to help your baby. And we're going to see more research definitely come in this space because it's becoming a trend. So that is a great place to start. I'm also just in this realm of like birth. I want to talk about before we get into a bit like later on in infancy. You can do immediate skin to skin contact and breastfeeding, which helps to expose your baby to the microbiome. So immediate skin to skin, again, I will explain to you my experience because I also didn't fully grasp what this meant. Immediate skin to skin means once the baby comes out of you, it is passed to you either underneath the drape, over the drape, around the drape, through your partner, through your midwife, whoever. As doctors do it in different ways. And then the baby's put directly on your chest, okay? On your neck, on your chest, on your face. Now, why there? Because you are lying down, your arms are at your sides. You can't sit up because you are cut open and they are, repairing you, doing whatever they're doing. So the baby lies on your chest, whatever skin that they can get. And that skin to skin is so important because that microbial transfer happens right then and there. Even if you can do it for 5 minutes, an hour, probably not an hour, however long you can until you're moved out of the OR, that will make a difference. The thing that typically happens, I guess, before, I think skin to skin was normal. Then I think it became super medicalized and now it's kind of coming back, is that they take the baby and they put the baby in a warmer, like this glass. Actually, it might not even be glass. I don't think it's glass. I think it's like a plastic box that's got a warming pad underneath to keep baby warm. And the baby is in a blanket and not on you. There's no, microbial transfer happening in that situation. So opt in for skin to skin. Actually, something that I should do, I'm going to make a note of this right now, is as I'm rebranding this year and really changing my business, I think a really good resource that I could put together for people is a birth plan. I've had a lot of women ask for it, and not necessarily like, hey, do these things, but like, hey, this is what this means. Here's something that you could print out, choose what you want type of idea, because that's what I did. I created my own. I took from a few different sources. And so I would be happy to kind of help you go through that if that's something that you're looking for. Let's have a quick real talk about something many of us don't think about enough: protecting our reproductive health from EMFs. EMFs, which are electromagnetic fields, are around us everywhere, from our phones to Wi-Fi, 5G towers, and even household electronics. But did you know that EMFs can impact sensitive areas of the body, including your ovaries? As women, protecting this vital part of our health is so important, especially if you are planning for your future, thinking about fertility, or maybe any other health issues or concerns you have with your ovaries. That's where Lila Quantum Tech's women's underwear comes in. This is no ordinary underwear, okay? It's infused with pure quantum energy and woven with silver fibers to block over 99% of measurable radiation, including 3G, 4G, and 5G signals. It's like giving your body and your ovaries a protective shield against harmful EMFs while staying comfortable and stylish. Lila Quantum Tech has created something truly special: durable antimicrobial underwear designed with your health and well-being in mind. Whether you prefer brief or bikini style, these are an absolute must for anyone looking to prioritize their reproductive health, which I know so many of us are. And here's the best part: you can get 2 pairs for $77 or 4 pairs for $149. And if you use my discount code BioHackingBrittany, you actually get a 10% discount on top of that bundle deal. So seriously, use it so you can save. Your health is worth it. Head to the link in my bio, on my show notes, on my website, and start to protect yourself today, starting from the inside out. Lila Quantum Tech, science meets self-care for every single part of you. So skin to skin and the vaginal seeding during the C-section, I think and like just right after, are the greatest place to start in terms of really helping the baby's microbiome. Then what we can look at is, once the baby is out, it's been a couple months, that type of thing, hopefully breastfeeding is going okay. There's some things that we can definitely do to support the gut microbiome of a baby. The first thing I would say is to test the microbiome. Yeah, you probably didn't think that, hey? There is a company out there called Tiny Health. I am trying so hard to get them to come on my podcast. We keep having to reschedule because the tests that my family and I did have not made it back to their lab yet because we're having postage issues here in Canada. So it is happening, but you can test. And this is an at-home gut microbiome test. It's available in the States and Canada. And it analyzes your baby's stool and gives you a breakdown of beneficial bacteria, potential pathogens, and recommendations for optimizing gut health. This is huge because if your baby was born by C-section or received antibiotics, this can give you insights into what bacteria they might be missing and how to restore the balance. I've tested myself. I've tested Callahan. We are waiting for our results. I would strongly suggest you do this. Tiny Health is an amazing company. They put family first, family health first. I would test yourself and I would test your baby if I were you to see what bacteria might be overpopulating or underpopulating in your gut. If you had to take antibiotics, take a look and see what did that mean for your gut? What did that mean for your microbiome and your baby's microbiome? Tiny Health analyzes all of that, and they specialize in this, right? Like, it's not a general gut microbiome test. It's for moms and babies and even dads if they want. But they specialize in this. They specialize in moms who have a C-section, in babies who have eczema, asthma, anything that can be kind of related to the gut. I really suggest doing this. You can even do consultations with their team and they can look at your results and be like, hey, this is what I recommend. So definitely get tested. As biohackers, we need the data to be able to make more informed decisions. And this definitely applies for you and your baby. Then we also have probiotics. So a lot of people will take the probiotic, what is it called? BioGaia, which is the first one that I saw on Amazon. And my baby takes this, but the probiotic that I love is called Evivo probiotic. And it contains B. infantis bacteria, which is one of the most crucial strains for babies. It helps digest human milk oligosaccharides. That is a fun word to say. I don't even know if I said that right. I'm looking at the spelling. Oligosaccharides, no. Oligosaccharides, it doesn't matter. Found in breast milk, promoting the growth of beneficial bacteria and strengthening the gut lining. Evivo is coming on my podcast next week, actually. So stay tuned for that episode. And studies have shown that modern day babies, especially those born by C-section, often lack this B. infantis due to antibiotic use, sterilized environments, aka being born in a hospital, and changes in maternal microbiomes. Supplementing with Evivo can help restore this critical bacteria. Other beneficial probiotics include Lactobacillus reuteri, great for colic and digestion. That is the one that's in that one I just talked about, the BioGaia. And then there's also Bifidobacterium brevi, maybe is how you say it, which is important for immune function. So if you're listening to this and you have a baby and you had a C-section or you're worried about the gut microbiome, personally, what I would do is I would take Evivo and I would take the BioGaia. That's what we do. In the morning, Callahan has 5 drops of BioGaia and 1 drop of vitamin D3. And then he takes Evivo probiotic, which is a powder in a bottle in the morning, like pumped breast milk in a bottle. My husband does the morning bottle. And that's how we kind of incorporate it. Strongly suggest this. And I'm so curious when we get our tiny health gut test back to see how this Evivo probiotic and BioGaia are playing a part in his bacteria, in his count of, B. infantis and how high they are and that type of thing. So stay tuned for that. I'm so curious to dive in because he's been on both for quite a while now. And then last but not least, I think something that I would also focus on is once baby is eating solids, so, around 5-6 months or even earlier, 4 months, prioritize probiotic and prebiotic foods. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. So probiotic, and I'm just going to speak to what I've done. Probiotic, I've done coconut yogurt, and I've taken a couple of spoonfuls of the sauerkraut juice. In a jar of sauerkraut, how there's so much liquid in there. So you take a little bit of the juice, like that liquid, and I've added it to the yogurt to give more healthy bacteria because sauerkraut is fermented, but you can't eat sauerkraut yet because of the shape and the size, and it's a choking hazard. I guess I could blend it and make a puree, but we just add a bit of the juice. So that's so easy. You could do something like that. You could also do, you have to be careful with some of the fermented foods. You could do full fat dairy yogurt as well. If you are introducing dairy, you can do prebiotic-rich foods like bananas, asparagus, and onions. So bananas, the greener they are, the more rich in prebiotics they are. But you have to be careful with bananas with babies because too much bananas can cause constipation. And it can't be too hard. So there's kind of like a line there that you have to draw that you have to be careful. So you could kind of experiment with prebiotic-rich foods. And then we have bone broth. So bone broth is another favorite of mine. It supports gut integrity and immune health. strongly suggest daily bone broth for baby. You only need a little bit of this. The main liquid and fluid should be breast milk or, formula until the age of 1. So not water, not juice, and not even bone broth. So when I give Callahan bone broth at dinner, it's a very small amount. Like we're talking like a tablespoon. He loves it. He loves it. And I actually need to post about this on Instagram. The way that I do it is I make bone marrow. I make whipped bone marrow, which he eats as like a puree. And then I take the bones that I use from that, and then I make bone broth out of that. And then I freeze it into little silicone shapes and cubes. And then I just thaw a couple of those for every meal. So I have tons right now. And because they drink such a small amount of it, that it lasts forever in the freezer. Okay, question number 2. How do I lower my HbA1c? Mine is 5.4%. So this person and I, we were going back and forth talking about multiple things. And we started talking about HbA1c, which is the average of your blood sugar over the last 60 to 90 days in percentage form. First of all, 5.4% is actually in the normal range. It is not in the pre-diabetic territory. It is, actually, it's not great in terms of like if you're a biohacker and like if you want to optimize your health, but it is definitely not diabetic or even pre-diabetic. I think pre-diabetic is 5.7. I think diabetic is 6.0 or 6.2? Something like that. So, however, optimizing blood sugar is one of the best things you can do for your long-term health and metabolic flexibility and longevity. So there's a lot you can actually do to lower that percentage. The lowest I've ever seen mine was 4.9%. Recently I did it and I did it at 3 months postpartum and it was 5.2%, I think. And then usually it's around 5.0%. But yeah, I've never seen mine lower than 4.9%. You'll see some biohackers, people like Ben Greenfield, who will hit like very low numbers, low 4s. That's wild. It's not something that's a goal of mine. For me personally, I would love to keep mine at 5.0, 5.1, maybe 5.2%. But again, 5.0 is kind of my goal always with HbA1c. So there's a lot you can do, which is great. So first of all, let's talk about nutrition. So you can prioritize protein and healthy fats at every single meal. I feel like protein is such a trend now, which is kind of weird because protein's always been important. But it's like people talk about protein about everything now. It's like, let me add this protein to this and collagen to this and that, which is a great thing, I guess, as long as it's like healthy sources of protein and complete proteins, not just no offense to like any vegans listening or anything like that, but we really want to be having like complete proteins with all of the amino acids in it, not just rice, not just beans, but putting those two together, or having eggs as a complete protein source would be a great idea as well. So eating a protein forward meal, at least 30 grams per meal, helps stabilize blood sugar and prevent glucose spikes. And then adding avocado to every single meal as well. So fats like avocado, olive oil, grass-fed butter, and wild-caught fish support insulin sensitivity. This is really, really important. And this is actually really easy. I do this all the time, especially with feeding Callahan now. I'm constantly like, when I'm putting these little meals together, thinking, okay, where's the fat? Where's the protein in this for him, especially for iron for babies, and even for myself. Like I will eat a bowl of oatmeal, which I usually don't love to eat oatmeal, and it will be gluten-free organic oats, but still like oats aren't great for you. They spike your blood sugar. They can be irritating for the gut. Anyway, if I do oatmeal, I will add 2 scoops of collagen protein to that, which then adds about 32 grams of protein to my meal. And that reduces that sugar spike that would typically come from that oatmeal. Also makes me feel fuller for longer. So I'm actually not grabbing more food 2 hours later, which I love. So try to incorporate protein in any way that you can and healthy fats at every meal as well. Then we have strength training and daily movement. You got to be moving daily. It doesn't matter if it's only walking, sure, but you have to be moving daily. Aside from maybe very intentional rest days, maybe around your period, it's a great idea. Maybe if you're sick, maybe if you're overstressed and you need a day in bed, that sounds lovely. Or if you're on vacation, like there are these pockets in life and these times in life where we really do need deep rest. And I think there's a lot of rest and recovery. There's a lot of healing that can come through that. On a daily basis, I would really, really suggest moving your body as much as you can, making sure you're getting in your steps, making sure you're stretching, working on keeping your body young and flexible and able to do the things that you want to do. There is more to say about this though when we talk about strength training. So resistance training increases glucose uptake in muscle cells without needing as much insulin. The more muscle you have, the more glucose you can store. This is huge. So I am not a fitness expert, although postpartum, I have learned the most about fitness possible because I've had the most weight to lose. To be completely transparent. Like I've had the most weight to lose ever in my life postpartum, and my body has looked the most different it has ever looked in my 31 years of existence. And so I have learned about fitness. I have learned about strength training and resistance training to build muscle, to shape my arms again, to get some definition in my abs, to, do these things that make me feel good about myself and make me feel strong and healthy. And so you got to be incorporating some resistance training because it will make such a big difference. Okay. The next thing you could do would be to try different supplements. Honestly, I would say that this isn't really going to move the needle as much as your nutrition and your fitness and your exercise. You really do have to have those in place before adding in anything like this. But you could try something like berberine, which is a powerful supplement that has been shown to be as effective as metformin in improving insulin sensitivity and lowering HbA1c. And then you could also try something like a myo-inositol. This is actually recommended a lot when we're talking about fertility and PCOS, but it's another natural compound that can support glucose metabolism and insulin signaling. I have a couple I've tried with this. I could definitely send some recommendations. If you want to send me a DM and this is something you want to dive more into, let me know. Maybe I do a whole episode on this. People talk about it like nature's Ozempic. I think berberine was called. There's way more to unpack here about that. So I'll just leave that there. And then last but not least is sleep and stress reduction. These are really, really big pillars, low-hanging fruit, things you have to do, foundational, whatever you want to call them. Poor sleep increases cortisol and insulin resistance, making it harder to regulate blood sugar. Prioritizing 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep is essential. This is really important. So I don't know if you've ever noticed, but on the days that you have less sleep, like let's say less than 6 hours, less than 5 hours, or it's super interrupted, or you just struggle to sleep a lot or get enough sleep, those days you typically feel way hungrier. You crave more food. At least I do. I eat more on days I don't sleep well of the night before, for sure. I eat more, I crave more, I want more sugar, more fat. It's like I'm looking for energy to keep myself going because I'm more tired. Now, obviously this is going to have an effect, right? It's going to increase our cortisol. It's going to increase our insulin resistance, and it's going to make it harder to regulate blood sugar. Even if you're adding in that protein and that fat that we really want to be doing, if you're still eating way more, it's not going to be great. And if you compound that day after day, it's really difficult. So this is definitely something that you want to biohack and look at and really regulate your sleep Make sure you're getting your hours in. I know it can be hard if you're pregnant or postpartum. Try to figure it out. Try to add in naps. Try to go to bed earlier. Maybe get some family support. There's so many ways that we can kind of add in more sleep and get better quality sleep in those periods of time. Again, I can do full episodes on that. But for the average person who's not going through something like that, who doesn't have a newborn at home, please prioritize this because this is huge for your blood sugar. And then stress reduction, right? So cold therapy, meditation can really help lower stress-related glucose spikes. This can look different for everybody. I've just kind of started getting more into meditation and breath work. I've gone in phases with it, but I really suggest you kind of try and add something like this in. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's breathing and just listening to like binaural beats. There's so many options here. You have to find what works for you. Could be walking, could be yoga, could be, I don't know, like how do we kind of have like a softer life almost, right? And reduce that stress reduction, which then helps us to manage our blood sugar better. For me, I love things that make me feel warm and fuzzy and good. So things like candles, a warm hot bath, essential oils. I love a sauna. I love binaural beats, like I said, or like lo-fi tropical house music, things like that are just very much like setting the tone. And this is actually making me realize that I really need to start my morning off on a better foot compared to like getting up, where's the baby, what's going on, looking at my phone, that type of thing. My phone is on airplane mode. I'm trying to keep it out of my room. It's hard, whatever excuse I'm going to give you. But like, how can we reduce the stress so that is better? How can we have a softer morning routine to reduce stress is a really, really good idea and something I should actually think more about it. But by making small lifestyle changes like these, you can optimize your metabolic health and lower your HbA1c naturally. And that's what we are aiming to do. Last but not least, did you sauna while you were pregnant? Woo-wee! This is controversial. I have had multiple people ask me about this. So before I dive into a bit of the research, and I'm also going to actually touch on the cultures that kind of actually do promote sauna use during pregnancy, I'm going to tell you what I did and my experience. So for me, when I was pregnant, this was the hardest thing for me to give up was my sauna and my steam room and my hot therapy, whatever you want to call it. Okay. I was going 3 or 4 times a week to my local one in my local gym and loved it. And this was very difficult. From what I gathered during that time when I was doing the research was that you really want to avoid it during first trimester. First trimester is critical. It's critical for developing the brain, the spinal cord, all of the development that really happens in those first 3 months is foundational. I don't even think foundational is the right word. I think it's pivotal to a child's health. So what I read online was avoid during first trimester. So, the fear definitely, worked on me and I was like, okay, didn't touch it with a 10-foot pole during first trimester. Second trimester rolls around, feeling great. Second trimester is like a breath of fresh air. It was awesome. And so I think I saunaed once or twice during my second trimester, once or twice during my third trimester. Here's the thing though. I was so excited to do it. Okay. It was like, for me, going in the sauna was like for an average person drinking a glass of wine while they're pregnant, right? Like, oh my gosh, I never get to do this. I'm going to do this one time. Wow. Like that wine doesn't do that for me. Okay. The sauna does. And so I was so excited. And then you get in the sauna and your heart rate is already higher. Your body temperature is already higher than it is naturally. So my ability to stay in the sauna was way lower. I think I stayed in for like 10 minutes and called it a day. Because if you're sitting at a resting heart rate, maybe it's in the 70s, usually mine is in the high 40s, low 50s, to then sit in a sauna already and your body temperature is higher when you're pregnant. I was like, holy smokes, I can't do this. And so for me, it wasn't even worth it because you don't even get the sweat out of it. It's not even relaxing because your heart's already going. So it really just was not it for me. And I just didn't really focus on doing it. So there are scientific concerns about sauna use during pregnancy. This is why online, if you look it up, there's so many people who say, so many blogs that say don't do it. Primary concern is hyperthermia, not hypothermia, which is overheating, which can increase the risk of neural tube defects in the first trimester, which is what I was talking about. Later in pregnancy, overheating can cause dizziness, dehydration, or changes in blood pressure. So if you are going to do it, man, you got to be drinking a ton of water, a ton. Arguably a liter before, during, and after would be my recommendation. I sauna now with breastfeeding and I drink a lot to make sure it does not impact my supply. And I also don't want to detox too much through my breast milk. That's a whole nother conversation and debate if that even happens. I try to err on the side of caution. And so I drink tons of water before, during, and after to just flush anything out of my body. There are cultures that do promote sauna usage while you're pregnant. So the first one is Finland. In Finnish culture, pregnant women regularly use saunas. Like I'm talking like multiple times a week. Though they often lower the temperature and reduce the session time, many believe it helps with circulation, relaxation, and even preparing for labor. And then we have Japan. So in Japan, pregnant women sometimes use onsen, which are hot springs, in moderation, but focusing on lukewarm temperatures. So something a little less hot again. And then we have the Native American sweat lodges. So there's some indigenous cultures that practice sweat lodges with pregnant women, though often at a lower intensity. So these are three very different places in the world that still use heat to support the health of mamas and mamas-to-be. It's just probably done shorter duration, supervision, like there's someone there with them, and the temperature is just not as hot. So again, I would say do not use it at all during first trimester. I don't think it's worth the risk of any neural tube defects. Then I would say for second and third trimester, use it for a shorter amount of time at a lower temperature if you can even tolerate it, which I really couldn't. And it was kind of a waste of my time personally. You could do things like warm baths. That's what I did. I did warm baths and nothing hot, just warm baths. And then I just started doing it again when I was breastfeeding and postpartum, which is now. So that is it for today's Q&A. I love these episodes because they give me a chance to share research-backed insights and my own experiences with you. If you have any more questions, send them my way on Instagram at BioHackingBrittany or through my website. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Please, please, please. And thank you for tuning in. And I will see you next time on Biohacking with Brittany. Thanks for listening to another episode of Biohacking with Brittany. If you're interested in finding the show notes or the sponsors for this episode, you can do so on my website, which is biohackingbrittany.com. Remember to follow me on Instagram where I'm most active. My handle is at BioHackingBrittany. And if you're interested in working together and you want to email me directly, you can do that. My email is info@biohackingbrittany.com. And I look forward to hearing from you and having you tune in next week.